You think you know what people think about you. You assume that their words match their thoughts, that the smile means kindness, that the silence means neutrality. But here's the truth, it doesn't. What narcissists secretly think about you is far darker, far more manipulative, and far more revealing than you might want to believe. And understanding it might save your life, your future, and maybe even your soul. People who live in narcissism operate in a psychological game that is very difficult for the ordinary person to see. You see, a narcissist doesn't look at you as you. They don't see your humanity. They don't recognize your struggles, your victories, or the depth of your soul. Instead, they see a tool, a mirror, a reflection of what they need in order to validate their fragile sense of superiority. Narcissists don't see you as human. That's a shocking realization, and for many people it's a painful one. Because when you enter into a relationship, whether it's personal, professional, or even casual, you assume that the other person perceives you as you perceive them. A complex individual with thoughts, emotions, struggles, and hopes. But that's not how the narcissistic mind operates. Their perception is fundamentally distorted. You are not an autonomous human being in their world. You are an extension of them, a reflection, or worse, a tool to be used to achieve their aims. And that is what makes interactions with them so dangerous. When you engage with someone who cannot recognize your humanity, you lose the foundation of authentic relationship. Think about this carefully. A genuine relationship, whether it's friendship, marriage, or even collegial respect, depends on the recognition of the other person as real, valuable, and independent. But the narcissist cannot allow that recognition. If they did, they would have to admit that you exist outside their control, that your value doesn't depend on them, and that your success or worth might stand independent of their validation. That realization terrifies them because it undermines the fragile scaffolding of their identity. This is why narcissists constantly manipulate the narrative. They distort conversations, twist intentions, and reframe events so that you begin to doubt your own reality. It's not because they simply enjoy lying, although deception is a tool they often use. It's because in their minds, your reality doesn't matter. What matters is that you fit into their framework. If you're useful, they will inflate your value temporarily. If you threaten their sense of superiority, they will diminish you, attack you, or attempt to erase your presence altogether. It's all part of a game, and the rules of the game are written solely to preserve their dominance. The tragedy is that many people don't realize this until it's too late. They keep searching for genuine humanity in the narcissist. They think, if I just explain myself more clearly, maybe they'll understand. If I just give a little more, maybe they'll appreciate me. If I show them my loyalty, maybe they'll finally treat me with respect. But that moment never arrives, because you're asking for something they are fundamentally incapable of giving. You're asking a narcissist to see you as human, and to them that recognition would be like surrender. It would mean they no longer hold the power to define you. So you must wake up to this reality. If someone treats you like an object, you must not continue to beg them to treat you like a person. If they deny your humanity, it doesn't diminish your worth. It only reveals their blindness. Here's the paradox: the more you try to prove your humanity to someone who refuses to see it, the less you actually live in alignment with it. You give away your energy, your self-respect, and your growth in the desperate hope that their perception might change. But the brutal truth is that it won't. The key then is to stop expecting the narcissist to change their lens. Instead, you must change your own. Recognize that their inability to see you as human has nothing to do with your worth and everything to do with their own brokenness. Once you stop tying your identity to their distorted perception, you reclaim your power. You step back into reality where you are a full human being, capable of love, responsibility, courage, and once you stand in that truth, the narcissist loses the one thing they crave most: control over your sense of self. That's why this realization is so vital. You are not an object. You are not a reflection. You are not a tool to to be used by someone else's fragile ego. You are a human being with intrinsic worth. And the moment you accept that, their game ends and your life begins. What narcissists secretly think about you is rooted in superiority and envy. That combination is toxic, and it's what makes dealing with them so confusing and exhausting. They look at you and immediately place themselves in a hierarchy above you, always above you. And yet, paradoxically, they envy what you have, who you are, and the qualities that you naturally carry. It's not admiration in any healthy sense. It's a corrosive form of comparison. They cannot simply acknowledge your strengths, because that would mean recognizing that you possess something valuable. They do not. Instead, they must twist the narrative in their own minds. I am better than you. I am more deserving. And whatever you have, I should have too. You see, envy is not the same as inspiration. When a healthy person sees someone else succeed, they might feel motivated. If he can do it, maybe I can too. That's a good response. That's growth-oriented. But a narcissist doesn't think that way. When they see you succeed, their immediate thought is, why them and not me? They don't deserve that. That should be mine. It's a worldview poisoned by entitlement. And it's not just about material success. It's about your character, your discipline, your relationships, even the light in your eyes when you're genuinely happy. They see that spark and they despise it, because deep down they know they can't create it within themselves. This is where the superiority complex comes in. In order to protect themselves from the gnawing sense of inadequacy, they inflate their perception of themselves. They tell themselves they are smarter, sharper, more talented. They rehearse this narrative so often that it becomes their shield. And when you challenge that shield by simply existing in your strength, they feel threatened. That's when the envy turns into subtle sabotage, criticism, or outright hostility. They cannot afford to let you stand taller than them, so they attempt to pull you down. Think carefully about the implications of this. When you succeed, the narcissist doesn't celebrate. They plot. When you stumble, they don't empathize. They feel relief, maybe even joy. That's the dark secret behind their thoughts. Your pain validates their superiority, and your victories trigger their envy. It's not the kind of relationship where mutual growth is possible, because in their mind, only one person can stand at the top, and it has to be them. Now what do you do with this knowledge? First, you stop expecting fairness from them. If you go through life expecting a narcissist to give you the same goodwill you offer them, you will be perpetually disappointed. Second, you must understand that their envy is actually evidence of your value. They wouldn't feel the need to compete with you if there wasn't something in you worth competing with. They wouldn't resent your joy if your joy didn't shine brighter than their facade. The very fact that they position themselves against you is proof that you're not beneath them. You're a threat to their fragile superiority. And here's the liberating truth. You don't have to participate in their game. You don't need to shrink yourself to protect their ego. You don't need to dim your light to avoid their envy. Your responsibility is not to manage their insecurities, but to live out your potential fully, regardless of how it exposes their emptiness. Their secret thoughts may be dripping with envy and superiority, but those thoughts only have power if you internalize them. If you see through them, they become irrelevant. The real challenge is this: do not let their distorted perception redefine who you are. If they secretly think they're above you, let them think it. If they envy you, let them stew in it. None of it changes the reality of your worth. What matters is that you stand firm in truth, that your success, your discipline, and your growth are yours to build, and no amount of narcissistic envy can take that away. Narcissists feed on dependence. That's the essence of their strategy, and it's the hidden engine that drives their relationships. They don't want you independent. They don't want you capable of standing on your own 2 feet with a strong sense of self and direction. No, they want you tied to them, emotionally, psychologically, sometimes even financially, because dependence is control. As long as you need them, they can dictate the rules of the game. As long as you keep seeking their validation, they can withhold it or offer it on their terms, ensuring you remain in their orbit. This is why narcissists are masters of manipulation. They're not simply arrogant or boastful. Those are surface level. Their real power lies in creating a web where you second guess yourself so often that you stop trusting your own judgment. You start to think, maybe they're right, maybe I do need them, maybe I can't navigate life without their approval. And once that seed of doubt is planted, they water it with subtle comments, small criticisms, backhanded compliments. They build a system where you crave their recognition like oxygen, and in that craving you become dependent. It's an old strategy, really. Control through deprivation. They give you just enough praise to keep you hooked, but never enough to make you feel secure. Think of it like training a dog with treats. You don't hand them out every time. You give them sparingly, unpredictably, so the dog keeps coming back, eager and uncertain. Narcissists do the same thing with affection, validation, and attention. One day they'll lift you up with exaggerated praise, and the next they'll tear you down with biting criticism. And you'll spend days or weeks trying to win back their approval, thinking it's your fault, when in reality the entire system is designed to keep you dependent. Now here's the really insidious part. Dependence is addictive. The human mind adapts to patterns of reward and punishment. So if you've lived in the cycle long enough, you start to crave even the crumbs of validation they throw at you. You rationalize their behavior. You tell yourself, at least they care enough to notice me. But that's not care, it's control. And the longer you stay trapped in that cycle, the more your sense of self erodes. You forget who you were before the manipulation began. But there's something important to understand. Dependence is not a reflection of your weakness. It's a reflection of their strategy. Narcissists deliberately craft an environment where your natural desire for connection is weaponized against you. They target your empathy, your loyalty, your willingness to see the best in people. They exploit those strengths until they become chains. That's what makes this so destructive. You're not trapped because you're incapable. You're trapped because your best qualities have been twisted into tools for their control. Breaking free begins with awareness. You have to see the pattern for what it is. When you realize that the highs and lows, the approval and rejection, are not random but calculated, you stop blaming yourself. You begin to step outside the cycle, and that's when their grip weakens. Because the truth is, narcissists have no real power without your participation. Their influence thrives only when you keep coming back for more, when you continue to seek what they will never truly give. So what's the antidote? Independence, the courage to stand in your own reality, even if they deny, the strength to affirm your own worth, even if they withhold recognition, the discipline to pursue your growth, even if they try to sabotage it. It's not easy. Dependence feels safer, even when it's toxic, because it's familiar. But freedom requires you to walk away from the game entirely and reclaim your identity as someone who doesn't need manipulation to feel alive. That's why dependence is so central to their psychology. If you break free, if you stop needing them, the narcissist loses. And when they lose control over you, they're forced to confront the emptiness within themselves, something they've spent their whole lives avoiding. People's opinions are one of the most unpredictable forces in life. No matter what path you take, someone will always find something to say about it. If you strive to be religious, there will be those who accuse you of being too strict, too old-fashioned, or too judgmental. If you relax your practice or show leniency, another group will rush to label you careless, lazy, or insincere. This pattern is endless because human beings see the world through their own limited lenses, shaped by their experiences, desires, and biases. As a result, it is impossible to live without facing criticism. Understanding this truth is essential for protecting one's heart and faith. The Prophet Muhammad himself was no stranger to criticism. Despite his honesty, kindness, and mercy, he was accused of being a liar, a poet, a sorcerer, and even insane. His companions faced similar accusations and ridicule. If the most noble of humanity could not escape people's negative words, then no one else can either. This realization frees us from expecting a life free of judgment or slander. It teaches us that criticism is not necessarily a reflection of our worth, but often a reflection of people's inability to see truth or their unwillingness to accept it. One of the dangers of living for people's approval is that it leaves us chasing shadows. Imagine someone who is praised for their generosity one day, only to be accused of showing off the next. If such a person's happiness depends on praise, they will be crushed when criticism comes. On the other hand, if they remember that Allah knows their intention, people's changing words lose their power. The believer finds comfort in the fact that sincerity is known to Allah, even if it is misunderstood by people. At the same time, not all criticism should be ignored. Islam teaches us to be wise and humble. Some feedback may actually contain truth and help us improve. But the key difference is this: we weigh people's words against the standard of Islam. If their criticism aligns with what Allah and His Messenger Zallallah have taught, we accept it with gratitude because it guides us to become better. If it contradicts divine guidance, we set it aside, no matter how loudly it is voiced. This approach prevents us from becoming arrogant while also protecting us from being enslaved to every passing opinion. In daily life, this balance is crucial. A person who tries to live for people's approval will always feel torn. If they wear modest clothing, some may say they are too conservative. If they dress more casually, others may call them un-Islamic. If they dedicate time to family, they may be called unambitious. If they focus on career, they may be called neglectful. These contradictions prove that you can never win in the court of human opinion. The only court that matters is the one before Allah, where judgment is fair, consistent, and based on truth. Criticism also tests the strength of our intention. When people speak against us, do we abandon good deeds just to silence them? Or do we continue for the sake of Allah, knowing He is the only one whose acceptance matters? Many righteous people of the past were mocked for their choices, yet they persevered and were honored in history because they prioritized Allah over people. This shows us that criticism is not something to fear, but an opportunity to purify our sins. Ultimately, the tongues of people will never stop moving. They will always find faults, whether real or imagined. The believer must accept this reality and learn to navigate it with patience. What matters is not silencing every critic, but ensuring that our path remains aligned with the Quran and Sunnah. If Allah is pleased, then no criticism can harm us, and if Allah is displeased, then no praise can benefit us. This perspective brings inner peace, because it shifts the focus from an unstable audience to the one whose opinion truly counts. A believer's greatest compass in life is a simple but profound question: what does Allah think of me right? This question cuts through the noise of people's opinions, the distractions of worldly ambitions, and the illusions of self-satisfaction. It forces us to turn inward and evaluate our actions, intentions, and priorities through the only perspective that truly matters, the perspective of our Creator. Many people live their lives worrying about how they appear in the eyes of others. They seek validation from friends, family, colleagues, and even strangers, adjusting their choices to earn approval. But this often leads them away from sincerity because their focus shifts from pleasing Allah to pleasing people. The one who constantly asks, "What does Allah think of me now?" avoids this trap and keeps their heart aligned with truth. This self-check is deeply rooted in the Quran and Sunnah. Allah reminds us that He knows what is hidden in our hearts, what our tongues whisper, and what our hands do in public and private. While people judge only what they see, Allah judges what is unseen. This means that a deed done quietly for His sake, unnoticed by others, may carry more weight than a grand act that attracts admiration. By asking what Allah thinks of us in every moment, we become mindful of our inner state as much as our outward actions. We learn to purify our intentions and guard against hypocrisy. The companions of the Prophet embodied this mindset. They were not obsessed with how many people respected them or how much status they held. Instead, they constantly feared whether their deeds were accepted by Allah. One companion once said, "If I knew that Allah accepted even one of my prayers, I would not care for anything else, for Allah only accepts from the righteous." This shows how serious they were about divine approval compared to human recognition. Their example teaches us that true dignity comes not from what people say, but from what Allah decrees. This mindset also shapes how we respond to daily choices. When tempted to sin in private, the thought, "What does Allah think of me now?" can stop a believer in their tracks. Even if no human eye is watching, they remember that Allah sees and hears everything. This awareness becomes a shield against temptation. Similarly, when performing good deeds, this question purifies intent. A person may ask themselves, "Am I doing this to be praised, or am I doing this because Allah loves it?" If the motivation is sincere, the act becomes an investment for the hereafter. If it is done for show, then it risks being wasted, no matter how impressive it appears to others. In a world full of distractions, social media, and constant comparisons, this self-check is more important than ever. People often measure success by likes, followers, or compliments, forgetting that none of these matter in the grave. What will matter is whether Allah was pleased with how we lived our moments. By frequently pausing and asking, "What does Allah think of me now?" we bring our focus back to what is eternal and silence the distractions of what is temporary. It grounds us in humility and response. This question also brings comfort in times of criticism or misunderstanding. If people accuse you unjustly or fail to appreciate your efforts, you can remind yourself, what matters is not whether they approve, but whether Allah sees sincerity in your heart. This removes the bitterness of being judged unfairly and replaces it with the sweetness of knowing that Allah's knowledge is perfect. The believer who thinks this way lives with confidence and peace, because their worth is tied to Allah's standard, not people's shifting opinion. In the end, every soul will stand before Allah alone, with no one to defend or validate it. That day, the only thing that will matter is whether our deeds were sincere and whether our Lord is pleased with us. Asking ourselves regularly, "What does Allah think of me now?" is a way to prepare for that moment. It transforms daily life into a journey of awareness, sincerity, and accountability. It is not about guilt or constant fear, but about living with purpose and direction. It keeps the believer grounded, humble, and hopeful, always striving for Allah's. On the day of judgment, all the noise of this world will disappear. The opinions of people, their praise and criticism, their acceptance and rejection, none of it will matter. What will stand before us are our deeds, laid bare, and the mercy of Allah, which alone can save us. This reality should shake us out of the illusion that people's words have lasting weight. The truth is that those whose approval we chase in this world will not be able to help us on that day. They will be too occupied with their own records, their own standing before Allah, to even think of us. The Quran paints this scene clearly: the day when a man will flee from his brother, his mother, his father, his spouse, and his children, each one concerned only about themselves. This reminder makes it clear that depending on human approval is not just unreliable in this life, it is completely meaningless in the next. Understanding this reality changes how we live. If our focus is always on people, then our deeds risk being hollow, built on shaky ground. A prayer prayed to be seen by others, or an act of charity given for reputation, will carry no weight before Allah. On the other hand, even the smallest act done sincerely for Him, like removing a harmful object from the path, or smiling at a fellow believer, will shine brightly on that day. What matters is not how many people noticed, but whether Allah accepted. This should give us both caution and hope. Caution that our deeds must be purified of showing off, and hope that nothing is too small when done sincerely for Allah's. Another lesson from this key truth is that worldly standards of success will not apply in the hereafter. In this life, a person may be celebrated for their wealth, their beauty, their influence, or their achievements. But on the day of judgment, these things will not buy safety. Wealth will not ransom a soul. Status will not grant forgiveness. And fame will not secure paradise. Instead, the only currency that matters will be righteous deeds and Allah's mercy. They still live responsibly in this world, but their ultimate investment is in what lasts beyond death. This perspective also eases the pain of being misunderstood or underappreciated in this world. How often do people labor quietly for their families, their communities, or their faith, only to find that their efforts go unnoticed? or even criticized. For the believer, this is not a loss, because they know Allah sees what others. Every tear shed in prayer, every sacrifice made in private, every moment of patience endured, none of it is wasted. On the day of judgment, these hidden deeds will be displayed in full, while people's fleeting judgments will vanish. Moreover, remembering that people will not matter on that day protects us from arrogance. Sometimes when we receive praise and admiration, we may begin to think highly of us. But the reality of the hereafter reminds us that such praise is empty if our deeds are corrupted by pride or insincerity. It humbles us to remember that even the greatest among humanity will stand trembling before Allah, hoping for His mercy. This humility keeps us focused on the real goal, striving for acceptance from the one who will decide our eternal fate. In the end, the day of judgment is a powerful equalizer. It strips away illusions, false honors, and human scales of worth. It exposes deeds as they truly are, not as they appeared to others. For the believer, this is both a warning and a comfort. A warning not to waste life seeking what does not matter, and a comfort that sincere efforts will never be lost, even if the world dismisses. What truly counts is walking into that day with a heart devoted to Allah, deeds done for His sake, and hope in His mercy. That is the ultimate success. My beloved brothers and sisters, the message is clear. Life is too short to waste in the exhausting pursuit of people's approval. No matter what we do, there will always be those who criticize and those who praise, and neither of them will stand with us when we meet Allah. Islam has given us something far greater than the unstable opinions of people. It has given us balance, clarity, and purpose. It has taught us that success lies in pleasing Allah alone, living a life of moderation, and constantly asking ourselves, where do I stand with my Creator right now? On the day of judgment, it will not matter how popular we were, how wealthy we became, or how well people spoke about us. What will matter is the sincerity of our deeds and whether Allah is pleased with us. That is the only approval worth chasing, the only acceptance worth fighting for. So let us realign our hearts, let us walk the balanced path of Islam, and let us free ourselves from the burden of people's expectations. If Allah is pleased with us, even if the whole world frowns, we are successful. But if Allah is displeased, even if the whole world applauds, we are ruined. May Allah grant us the wisdom to live with balance, the courage to rise above people's opinions, and the sincerity to seek only His pleasure. May He make us among those who are pleased with Him and with whom He is pleased.